Is it actually possible to go from 0 to 41 million? I'm talking about real numbers, not hype, not a fantasy, not a maybe one day. From 0 to 41 million. And if you're thinking, that sounds impossible, good. That's exactly why I'm making this video, because I'm going to walk you through what it takes to go from nothing to wealth. And I'm going to do it in a way that's honest, practical, and spiritual. But before I teach anything, I need to set the tone. I'm going to be uncomfortably transparent, because if you don't understand the pain behind the breakthrough, you'll treat this message like entertainment instead of instruction. 10 years ago, I wasn't just broke, I wasn't down a little, I was below zero. I was living on money that wasn't mine. I had a friend, someone I'm literally doing an event with in Dallas this weekend, who carried me. For all of 2013 and all of 2014, he loaned me about $4,000 a month while I was trying to stand back up after life hit me so hard it felt like the wind got knocked out of my soul. Now fast forward, from 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024 so far, as of last night, this doesn't even include what came in today. Our business generated $41,375,000. Yeah, 41 million. I know, even saying it out loud sounds unreal. I almost need to see the number again to believe it myself. So the question becomes, how? How does a person move from borrowed survival to that? And I'm going to anchor the whole answer in a verse you already know, but you probably haven't seen the way I'm about to show it to you. The Bible says in Deuteronomy 8:18, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power to get wealth." Then it warns not to forget God and not to say in your heart, "My own power and the strength of my hands made me this wealth." That warning matters because God is correcting a common lie, the lie that success is self-created. I get it. You did something. You worked, you learned, you built, you made decisions, you took steps. But there's a deeper truth. You only did what you could do because God gave you the ability to do it. Think about it like this. You can make yourself look at something, but you cannot command your eyes to function. God gave you sight. You can choose to walk, but you can't force your legs to work. God gave you movement. You can hold something in your hand, but you can't manufacture the ability for your hand to grip. Some people literally can't. God gave you the power to hold. He gave you the power to think, the power to breathe, the power to learn. So even when you did it, you didn't do it alone. Which means the power to get wealth isn't just motivation. It's a real thing. And in this video, I'm going to break that power into its main components. But before we break it down, let me teach you two things about wealth most people never learn. First, here's the truth that changes everything. Wealth is a high-energy result. Let me write that in your mind. Wealth is not random. It's not luck. It's not for certain people. Wealth is a result, and it comes from high energy. Why? Because everything in life is energy. Energy doesn't disappear. It only changes form. Money is stored value. Business is value exchange. Influence is energy transfer. And wealth is the byproduct of operating from a higher level of energy than your environment. Now here's a principle you can test anywhere. No high-energy result will consistently flow to a low-energy source. That's not New Age. That's life. And by the way, the verse says, God gives you power to get wealth. What is power? Power is energy. Electricity is called power. People even say the power company. So if God gives you power, He's giving you the energy capacity, internally and externally, to produce what you couldn't produce before. This is why you have to become intentional about your words. Because words carry energy. The way you speak tells the world what you expect, what you tolerate, and what you're available for. Your mouth becomes a signal, and most people signal low energy all day without realizing they're repelling opportunity. Let me paint it with a picture. A 747 jumbo jet can carry hundreds of people, like a flying town. Fully loaded, it weighs an insane amount. When you see that much mass, your brain doesn't naturally say, let's lift that 5 miles into the sky and push it at 500 miles per hour. That sounds ridiculous. But it happens every day. Why? Because a 747 doesn't run on small engines. It has powerful engines, and it has multiple engines for redundancy. It's built to generate the energy required for the result. So what's my point? If you want a high-energy result called wealth, you must become a high-energy source. When you become a high-energy source, your mind, your discipline, your words, your presence, high-energy outcomes start finding you. But if you remain low energy, then only low energy results will keep circling back. And some people get nervous right here and say, that sounds like some weird ideology. No, truth is truth. The problem with many false ideologies is they try to use God's principles without honoring the God who authored them. But a principle doesn't stop working because someone mislabels it. If it's true, it's true. Now here's the practical piece. Stop answering life like a broke person. When people ask, how are you? Don't respond with, I'm surviving. I'm above the dirt. I'm just managing. Listen, no jokes. Those are low energy statements, and they cost you more than you realize. Nobody wants to buy from that. Nobody wants to partner with that. Nobody wants to follow that. Even if you think it sounds humble, it's not humility. It's a pattern of agreement with lack. I was at the bank recently and asked a young guy, strong, employed, meaning he's earning, how are you doing? He shrugged and gave me the usual gloomy answer, like it was normal. And I wanted to say, that's why I asked you. I don't know how you're doing. But I let it pass. Here's what I'm teaching you. Your life doesn't just respond to your work. It responds to your energy. Wealth is a high-energy result. Become the source. Now let me give you the second truth that breaks people's brains. Second principle. Wealth is measured more in time than in money. That one line will rearrange your focus. Because most people think wealth equals a number, but wealth is not just how much, it's how fast. Let's do a simple comparison. If you make $1 million, are you rich? It depends. It depends on how long it took you to make it. If you earn $25,000 a year for 40 years, you eventually touch $1 million. But nobody calls that rich. Why? Because it took 4 decades. The time cost is enormous. But if you make that same million in 1 year, you're not just richer, you're 40 times richer in speed. Same amount, completely different wealth level. Now push it further. If you make $1 million a month, that's a different universe. Now you're hundreds of times richer than the person who took 40 years. Not because the number is different, but because the time required is different. And I'm saying this as someone who's been blessed to create wealth. I'm not the richest man alive. I'm not pretending to be. But I know enough to tell you this. Wealth creation has a need for speed. And here's why this is hard for people. You've been warned your whole life about get-rich-quick schemes. But nobody warned you about the stay broke forever scheme. Think about that. You got protection from one trap, but you were left exposed to another trap that's socially acceptable. Everybody around you will clap for you staying small as long as you stay safe. But safety can become a prison when it's based on fear. So the real question is, do you want to live on the struggle bus forever? When there are people on this earth whose problems you can solve right now? And let me break something open. You don't always need another degree to solve problems. You don't always need another certificate. Sometimes you already have the solution because you lived through the problem, overcame it, and now you're qualified by experience. Yet people say, I don't want to make too much money too fast. Why? Because deep down they're afraid of what changes. Let me tell you something that happens when you start earning real money. Maybe it happens to you, maybe it doesn't. But it happened to me. You start feeling guilt. Because money gives you options, and options create separation. You can choose when you wake up. You can choose where you live. You can choose how you travel. You can choose what you drive. You can choose what your day looks like. And then you look around, and people you love don't have those choices. And that contrast can mess with your heart. Then you start thinking, I'm not better than them. And you're not. But now you're living with a different level of freedom, and it can trigger guilt. In my early stages, I started giving money away randomly. Not because it was wisdom, but because I didn't know how to process how fast it came and how different my life was becoming. I'm telling you the truth. So when I say wealth requires speed, I'm not saying be reckless. I'm saying stop worshiping slowness like it's holiness. The next 10 years will pass whether you change or not. Now, with those two foundations set, high energy and time-based wealth, let's turn back to scripture and look at people in the Bible who got wealthy without dragging it out forever. Because some people hear fast wealth and immediately think manipulation, scams, or magic. So let me be clear. I'm not here to sell you a miracle seed. I'm not here to tell you sow into me and you'll be rich. I'm not here to promise you a shortcut that ignores character. What I am here to tell you is this: principles work. And principles keep working whether you love them or hate them. Principles don't care about your opinion. They don't care about your comfort. They don't care about your background. God built life on laws, automation, so results would be predictable for those who align with truth. Now look at Abraham. Genesis 12. God calls Abram to move, new land, new direction, new obedience. Then in the next chapter, you see something powerful. Abram becomes very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. Notice the progression. God speaks, Abram responds. Provision accelerates. Now watch Solomon. God tells Solomon, ask what I should give you. Solomon doesn't ask for wealth. He asks for wisdom. How to lead, how to discern, how to serve properly. And God's response is wild. Because you asked for understanding and not selfish gain, I'm giving you wisdom and what you didn't ask for, riches and honor, so that none of the kings compare. That is power to get wealth in motion. So what is this power? How does it work in real life? How does a man go from broke and borrowing to $41 million in a few years? I'm going to break it down into components because the power to get wealth isn't one thing. It's a system. And the first component is one most people don't want to hear. The power to get wealth includes the power of pain. Yes, pain. Because many people don't get wealthy for one simple reason. They don't have to. They're comfortable. They're surviving. They can pay most bills. They can distract themselves. They can cope. So there's no pressure strong enough to make them change. Pain is what moves a person off square one. And there's a dangerous zone I've seen over and over, around $100,000 a year. People hit that level and start feeling like they arrived. They feel like a baller. And compared to where they came from, it feels massive. But that level can become a ceiling if it makes you comfortable enough to stop growing. Then you hit $250,000 a year, around $20,000 plus a month, and now you feel like a king. You start thinking, this is the top. But sometimes God will put you around someone with a different perspective, someone who sees bigger, so you can realize you're not even in the neighborhood yet. That happened to me at a wealth retreat. I gave a testimony about making around $30,000 a month with low expenses, feeling like I had broken through. And the mentor looked at me and said, you're about to break into the big money in front of hundreds of people. For a moment, I felt embarrassed. Then I got enlightened. Because it hit me, there are levels where $30,000 a month is not big, it's just a number. And that moment reframed my entire worldview. So yes, pain matters. But pain isn't only money pain. It comes in layers. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Pain can come from reality. Reality teaches lessons whether you volunteer or not. For me, I learned what no feels like. I learned what it feels like when life shuts doors. I learned what it feels like when people look at you different because you don't have what they have. Here's a real moment. When my wife was 8 months pregnant with our first child, our electricity and water were cut off at the same time. As a man, that did something to me internally. I can't describe it like a movie scene. It was quiet, but heavy. Then when our child was born, I was on welfare for months. I remember someone in the office telling my wife, while I was right there, that she could receive more if I wasn't in the house, like I was invisible, like I was a burden. That's pain. And I'm saying this carefully. Not everybody has felt that kind of pressure. Some people have never had enough pain to create the spark required to chase something bigger. Then there's the pain of relationships, because relationships are difficult for a simple reason. Other people are not you. If you want to understand how hard it is to control someone else, just remember how hard it is to control yourself. And there's the pain of rejection. I grew up with a leg brace. I couldn't run well. In games, I'd be picked last. Not always out of cruelty, sometimes just practicality. But when it happens over and over, it shapes you. And sometimes rejection becomes fuel because it forces you to find acceptance inside, with God, so you stop begging people to validate you. Now here's the twist. Pain is a component of the power to get wealth, but it's not the most important one. The deeper component is this: purpose. If you're going to create serious wealth, you will almost always find it in the arena of purpose, because your purpose is linked to the people you're designed to serve, the problems you're equipped to solve, and the impact you're meant to make. Purpose is not a trendy word. Purpose is assignment. And God doesn't equip you randomly. He equips you specifically so your work produces fruit in a way that fits you. Here's where people mess up. They see someone else making money, and they try to copy the method, even if it's not their assignment. You'll chase a model because it's profitable, but if it's not yours, you won't last. It'll drain you. It'll bore you. You'll quit when it gets hard because you're building something you don't even like. Let me give you a personal example. I joined a high-level coaching program where the strategy was, do a webinar every week for a year. Sounds solid, works for many people. But I hate webinars. Not learning from them, doing them. I don't like talking to a screen. I don't like creating slides. I don't like the feeling of teaching into the void and hoping strangers type one in the chat. That's not my flow. So I refused to build a business that required me to do something I hate weekly just to make money. Because all money isn't good money if it costs your joy, your energy, your family, and your consistency. You have to build a model that keeps you strong enough to serve at a high level. And that brings us to the big question. How do you discover purpose? I'm going to give you the framework. Purpose is found at an intersection. On one side is passion, what you love doing. On the other side is proficiency, what you're naturally or skillfully good at. Where passion and proficiency overlap, you usually find assignment. And here's the spiritual layer. When you delight yourself in the Lord, it's not only that He gives you what you want, it's that He shapes what you want and then empowers you to receive it. God isn't in the business of teasing His children. A good father doesn't enjoy frustrating his child. So when you discover your purpose, you don't invent it, you uncover it. You were created for purpose. You simply have to find it. For me, I love teaching the Bible, and I love business. For years, I didn't realize you could merge those two worlds. I thought they were separate lanes. Then I started teaching both together, and people leaned in. They asked for more. That's when I realized, wait, this is my lane. And what's interesting is I didn't find purpose by copying someone else because I didn't even see people doing this exact combination the way I do it. I had to be willing to be uniquely me. That's why some people will complain, why does he always mention scripture? Because it's my foundation, and if you don't like it, you're not my audience. And that's okay. I'm not offended, but I'm also not changing my assignment to win people who were never called to this table. Now, once you find purpose, it's not enough to have it. You must develop yourself for it. And this is where the difference between amateurs and professionals shows up. Amateurs spend way more time performing than preparing. Professionals spend way more time preparing than performing. That's why professionals look effortless. Their effort happened before you saw them. This lesson humbled me because for decades I taught truth, biblical truth, life truth, even business truth, and sometimes people resisted it. I watched doors close. I watched people reject what I knew was right. And over time I learned, you can be correct and still be unprepared for the assignment level you're aiming for. Preparation matters. Precision matters. Excellence matters. So the sequence is, discover purpose. Develop yourself for purpose. Deploy yourself in purpose. Now, once you do that, the next power becomes critical. Perception. Because wealth isn't only about work, it's about what you can see. You need the power of perception, because if you can't perceive principles, you will constantly fight life instead of flowing with it. A principle is a law that produces predictable results. For example, the law of sowing and reaping. You reap what you sow, you reap later than you sow, you reap more than you sow. If you ignore that, you sabotage your own future. Tell a lie because it feels convenient today, and later when the truth surfaces, you destroy trust in one moment, and trust can take years to rebuild. That's a principle, and your inability to perceive it can cost you relationships, money, and opportunities. There are wealth principles everywhere. Every word is a seed, every action is a seed, every dollar is a seed. You're always planting something into your future. And here's a big one. Doing well in business requires obeying the command to love God and love people. Because if you violate people for profit, it will come back with a receipt at the worst possible time. So perception includes seeing principles, but it also includes seeing people's problems. Let me say this sharply. If you're miserable, it's often because you're trapped inside yourself. Joy increases when you become obsessed with helping other people. The same is true for wealth. Your financial problem is usually not that you need money. Your financial problem is that you haven't focused on solving a big enough problem for a large enough group of people who have money to pay for the solution. That's why money follows value. Money does not chase need. Money chases problem solving. And when you understand that, you stop begging for money and start building solutions. This is literally where the $41 million came from. Obsessing over people's problems until the solution became clear, simple, and repeatable. And here's another key. The solution must be simple enough to implement. Not 40 steps, not a complicated maze. Something you can remember, teach, apply, and scale. When your solution becomes clear, then you learn the next perception skill. Perceive the payoff. Most people can't sell because they keep talking about what they have instead of what the buyer gets. Nobody cares about your product. They care about the transformation. If I'm selling a book and I keep describing the book, the listener's mind says, so what? But if I describe what applying the principle inside the book can do for them, now they're interested. So the order is, see principles, see problems, see payoffs, and speak in payoff language. That is persuasion. That is business. That is wealth. Now I'm going to mention one more power. Then the speaker in your script sets up part 2 of the original message. We're going to keep that same structure. The next power is called precision. The power to get wealth includes the power of precision, meaning knowing when to move, what to do, and being prepared when the window opens. Scripture says something like this. The race doesn't always go to the fastest, and the battle doesn't always go to the strongest. Then it says time and chance happen to them all. But time and chance aren't luck. Time is preparation. Chance is opportunity. And right time is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So let me end with the story that explains where a huge portion of this revenue acceleration came from. Back in 2011, I had a conversation with a top internet marketer. He told me, "You're one of the best I've ever seen at the presenting on a whiteboard. When you teach in rooms, people throw money at you. If you do it online, it'll still work. Take what you do in rooms and bring it online." Great advice. And what did I do? Nothing. The rest of 2011. I didn't do it. 2012. I didn't do it. 2013, 2014, 2015. All the way through years later, still didn't do it. Why am I telling you this? Because many people don't fail due to lack of information. They fail because they delay obedience. Then eventually, life forced a pivot. An event was scheduled, tickets were sold, everything was set up in a hotel. Then suddenly the world changed, and the venue shut down, contracts got canceled, and we had a decision. Refund everyone or go virtual. We went virtual, and the results were shocking. We sold more tickets. We brought in hundreds of thousands online. Then we repeated the process again with other events. Then in 2021, we launched a challenge model, and it became a thing. And here's the lesson. Sometimes the right place isn't enough. You can be in the right place 100 times and still miss your moment if you're not ready. Readiness is what makes timing right. So next time you find yourself in the right place, be ready, because your readiness is what turns that moment into the breakthrough moment. And yes, you can go from zero to wealth. Now, the original script closes with a part 2 teaser and a closing blessing style. We'll keep that rhythm, but clean the wording and tighten the ending. Let me say it one more way so it lands. The next 10 years are coming whether you prepare or not. Time will move forward with or without your permission. The only question is, will you still be explaining why you couldn't, or will you be living in what you built? Because wealth is not just about money. Wealth is about energy. Wealth is about time. Wealth is about purpose. Wealth is about perception. Wealth is about precision. And the painful truth is this. Many people have been positioned near opportunity, but they weren't developed enough to recognize it and disciplined enough to capitalize on it. So don't just pray for doors, prepare for doors. Don't just ask for increase. Become the kind of person who can carry increase without self-destructing. Don't just want a new level. Build the habits that belong to that level. And if you're listening to this and thinking, I've missed too many chances, let me help you. You're still here, which means your story isn't finished. The same God who gave the power to get wealth is able to restore time, redirect purpose, and sharpen perception. But you have to stop agreeing with low energy. You have to stop celebrating slow obedience. You have to stop calling comfort peace when it's actually stagnation. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be aligned. So here's the assignment from everything we covered. Become a high-energy source. Measure wealth through time, not just numbers. Stop fearing speed, fear staying stuck. Let pain become fuel, not an identity. Find purpose at the intersection of passion and proficiency. Develop like a professional, not an amateur. Train your perception, principles, problems, payoff. Be ready when the room opens. Now, there are additional powers I didn't unpack here, more components of this system that complete the framework, which is why the message continues. In the next part of this teaching, part 2 of the overall series, I'm going to pick up where we left off and cover the remaining components, because what I've given you so far is already enough to change your mindset, but not enough to complete the whole blueprint. And I want you to do something between now and then. Don't just listen. Apply. Pick one principle, just one, and practice it for the next 7 days. Change your language. Upgrade your energy. Identify one problem you can solve. Write down the payoff. Start moving. Because information without application is entertainment, but truth applied becomes transformation. So until next time, stay focused, stay disciplined, stay aligned, and remember this. When you're ready in the right place, it becomes the right time. And you can go from zero to wealthy. We'll continue in the next episode. Stay safe, stay blessed.